Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Ben 10 Retrospectives, and today we're going to be talking about episode 21 of the original Ben 10 series, Ultimate Weapon. And in this episode, the Tennysons are hunting down a ancient artifact for once. And what the artifact is an ancient mask called the Mask of Apuk, which was found at a oil rig while drilling. And because the Tennysons are far enough away, I suppose, they got the rust bucket sensed the power and alerted Max. And as such, Max becomes determined to get it because through his exposition, we learn that the plumbers have been hunting the Mask of Akpuk because it's a key to another ancient artifact called the Sword of Ekchua, and Ekchua was supposed to be the Mayan god of war. And pretty much the sword, if put in the right hands, could easily spell destruction for the world, depending on who the wielder is. And so Max is determined to ensure that the sword does not fall into the wrong hands, and so he wants to get the mask and find the sword first. But however, they meet with opposition because someone else wants the sword as well, and that someone else is Enoch, the leader of the Forever Knights, who were previously called the Organization in their first appearance, episode 11, A Small Problem. And so the Forever Knights are now aware of who the Tennysons are because they apparently did their research, so they know Max is a plumber, and I think they might know that Ben has the Omnitrix, so I don't know, but it's not confirmed, so I don't know. But either way, they want the sword as well, and so it becomes a race between the Tennysons and the Forever Knights because they both want to get the sword, and it's pretty much and throughout all this, Max is very determined, he has tunnel vision pretty much and wants nothing more than to just get the sword, to the point where he starts disregarding Ben and Gwen, to the point where his personality kind of slips very close into douche territory. So honestly, first I might as well talk about the positives about this episode. Well, because I like it, because I think this is a good episode. I like it. I think what helps it work is just kind of both the adventure aspect, because this is a treasure hunt through and through, and it has the usual tropes like finding the artifact, finding clues, following a map, and just kind of and of course when they get almost there, dealing with booby traps. So it's actually pretty cool and it's actually pretty interesting, and it has that nice adventure feel to it. And I think another strong aspect is Max. Okay, the Forever Knights are a good challenge, and we get to see more of them in this case, and we see more of Enoch as a villain in here, because in A Small Problem, we still got a good amount of him being a villain in A Small Problem, and in this case we get to see more of that. He's pretty much just, he still acts charming and he still acts charming like the head. He has a superior air to him, but it's also at the same time you can see he's kind of quick to anger if things don't go his way. It's just he can be a capable and smart villain here. It's just that he can hold himself up. It's just that he's short-tempered and impatient. So anyway, I'm getting off topic. I think another good aspect is actually kind of the storyline involving Max, because usually in these shows, the one that usually has to learn a moral is Ben. Ben, which makes sense. Ben is the aspiring hero. He wants to save the day, help right wrongs, be a good guy through and through. And since he's a kid, he's learning and going along. Well, in this case, Ben is not the one that has to learn a lesson. It's Max. Because in this episode, Max gets, I mentioned again, the tunnel vision. Because the instant the rust bucket alerts Max about the discovery of the Mask of Apuk, he becomes very obsessed with finding it, to the point where he doesn't let up on anything. When Ben and Gwen start kind of inputting their own usual flair into this, like making jokes, making puns, but at the same and just kind of making cracks here and there, he's very quick to shoot them down, because he's very determined to not let stuff like this happen. Because he really is just keeping his eyes focused on getting the Sword of Ekchua, and as such, he's just It's pretty much just mission or nothing for him at this point. And as such, when Ben and Gwen try and input their usual flair of making jokes or just trying to have fun with it while still being aware of the seriousness, he just keeps shooting them down, which in this case, it can have its case. In this case, it makes sense because this is again, you can understand this. The plumbers, he says, have been searching for the sword of Echua for a long time, but never found it. And because of its power, it makes sense that they would be determined to find it. Because again, that's one of the reasons main reason Max wants to find the sword, because he knows if it falls into the wrong hands, it could be total destruction for the world. And so his personality is reflective of that. He wants to get this over and done with and make sure that this very powerful artifact is not found. And I knowing how my vlogs go, I will be ultimately revealing what happens when they do get to the sword, but in this case, we kind of see things from Ben and Gwen's perspective, and while you can understand this change in his personality, at the same time, you can kind of see how you realize that Ben and Gwen do have a point. He becomes obsessed with finding the sword, and he's just kind of pushing everything else aside to get it. Like an example is that when Ben and Gwen, when they get to the temple, Max is just kind of when Ben has the idea of use the mask to where the temple where the sword is. When Ben has the idea of using the mask to find a secret way in, he does, but Max just kind of seems angry, but Max wasn't really thinking that through. And when they get inside the temple, Ben almost falls to his death, because at this point he just used the Omnitrix, so it's still recharging. He almost falls off. Max, of course, rushes to his aid and saves him. But once he pulls him up, he's like, "Oh, that was close. Almost lost the mask," because Ben had it on his person at the time. Which, honestly, is a very big lapse for the character. Because Max, despite his determination in other episodes, has been caring towards his grandchildren. And in this case, it's just that this is the first time that you start seeing him kind of disregarding them. Not completely, because he does go to their aid. He still wants to protect them. And even when he is about to get to the sword, the Forever Knights take Ben and Gwen and are holding them at sword point to force Max to surrender. Because he still cares about them. It's just that in this case, he's thinking more big picture. But at the same time, you can also see he's disregarding his loved ones. You can see how it's affecting Ben and Gwen, who are aware of the seriousness, but at the same time, they want their grandfather back, the fun guy who makes all these trips worthwhile. Which, admittedly, when we get to the end, you see that come back in spades when they learn what has happened to the Sword of Echua, which I might as well just spoil that, because they ultimately do get to the Sword of Echua. The Forever Knights get in first, but then Ben and Gwen, the Tennysons go in there, and it turns out it's guarded by the actual god of death, the Mayan god of death, Apuk, or at least something, I don't know. So and ultimately in the clash, Enoch gets to the sword first. He pulls it out. It looks like he's gonna win, and the sword is reduced to dust, because while it's an ancient powerful sword, the metal in it, after 5,000 years, the metal eroded to the point where just touching it caused the whole thing to fall to dust. And Max's reaction, instead of being anger, is just bursting out laughing, because he realized that this whole time he was just he was getting very serious about something that, no matter who found it, it would have been nothing. They would have found the sword and it would have been reduced to dust, and it is actually kind of it is kind of an amusing payoff. Aggravating, because you start realizing that they went through all this and it's nothing, but still kind of amusing. But I just kind of, again, it's understandable, but I think that, again, the moral is just kind of understandable on both sides. Ben and Gwen are aware of the seriousness, because they save the world most of the time. In fact, there was one point where the Earth was almost destroyed. Again, big tick. But at the same time, there's usually been an air of fun to it. Like, we're saving the world, but we're having fun while doing it. We know it's serious, but we like to liven the mood. Reward success. Take a breath every once in a while, but Max is just determined. And again, it's on different points. Ben and Max are used to having the fun side of it, but just and seeing their Max go through this such an intense transformation scares them. And at the same time, you can understand why Max is doing it. It's pretty much if they don't find this, it's everything is dead. The world is doomed. So again, so it's kind of a nice dynamic, and I do kind of like that. I do like that Max is the one that has to learn the lesson. That it has to be your own personal feelings versus the fate. It has to be fate of the world versus the fate of your family, and I think in the end Max would still choose his family. It's just that in this case, it just kind of the transformation was more scary for the Tennysons. But again, I don't think either side is completely in the wrong or completely in the right with how they're doing. It's just kind of a clash of well, the way they usually do things mixed with this determination. But I really don't know what else I can say about the episode. I liked kind of the moral having Max and his grandchildren kind of clash over over their original ideology versus Max's tunnel vision. And again, the Forever Knights aren't I thought the Forever Knights aren't my favorite villains on the show, but they're fine. I like them, and I think Enoch is a pretty amusing villain. I like the treasure hunt. I like the whole treasure hunting aspect of the episode, and just kind of the ancient stuff because I love magic masks. It's actually kind of they're pretty cool if you ask me. And honestly, I can't really think of anything else. Again, it's a good story, nice moral lesson. We still got some good fight scenes because there is a nice fight scene between Ben and Apu. Ben is forearms, and which again, over on the whole, it's a good episode. Like the message, like the plot line, like the villains. Yeah, overall, good episode. So. Yeah, I'm Samuel Johnson. Thank you for watching, and tune in next week. We'll look at episode 22 of the original Ben 10 series. So, again, I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll see you next week. Take care.